And let's see. Let's invite our board secretary to do a roll call of the directors.
All right, let's start with Board President Naylor.
Here.
Director Green?
Here.
Director Oyserman?
Here.
Director Perry?
Present.
And Director Shea?
Here.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. Well, welcome to the July 14th virtual meeting of the Marinwood CSD Board of Directors pursuant to Executive Order N2920 issued by the Governor of the State of California. There will not be a public location for this meeting. Any interested member of the public can participate telephonically or via internet by utilizing the web link or the dial-in information printed on this agenda. At points in the meeting, when the meeting chair requests public comment, members of the public participating in the live meeting, either via internet or telephone, can indicate their desire to speak. If participating via internet, please click the raise hand feature located within the Zoom application screen. If connected via telephone, please dial *9. Okay. Does anyone on the board have any changes at all to the agenda this evening?
No.
Okay, I'm hearing none. And given that, the agenda is adopted as presented. At this point in time, I'd like to read a brief statement that we talked about at the last meeting and ask the board to carefully consider this statement, as at some point I would like to adopt this as a statement in support of Black Lives Matter. In the past year, Marinwood and our adjoining communities have experienced two well-publicized events which demonstrate that racial prejudice exists here and should be a concern not only for people of color, but for all of us. Prejudice was often evident in last year's acrimonious battle over the name of our local school district, and it received national attention. This year, in the wake of the deaths of several Black citizens at the hands of police officers, a number of Marinwood citizens peacefully protested this unequal treatment, as well as the too often fatal use of excessive force by law enforcement by chalking messages on sidewalks that Black Lives Matter. Another member of our community confronted these peaceful protesters with an obscene verbal attack, which was captured on video and well publicized. While I do not believe that these events represent the values of the majority of our extended community, we must strive to do better and suggest that our board adopt the following statement of support. The Marinwood Community Services District stands in support of Black Lives Matter, opposes any suppression of our citizens' right to peacefully and non-destructively protest all forms of systemic racism, welcomes all people to our community to utilize our facilities, our parks and playgrounds, and participate in our programs in a safe, responsible manner. Supports initiatives to eliminate unequal treatment of people of color and the use of excessive force by law enforcement. Supports identifying situations to safely dispatch appropriate first responders rather than law enforcement. Supports identifying and eliminating all systemic racism in education, housing, general welfare, which continue to impact people of color. Would anyone on the board care to comment on any of the above?
I think it was well stated, and I agree that we should adopt, if not this, then something very similar to this.
Thank you, Sivan. Isabella, comment?
I wholeheartedly agree with the statement. However, I'm disappointed that it's not on the agenda because I think it should. And the one other thought I have is, historically, we have abstained from taking any positions on anything outside of the jurisdiction. And our mission was always invoked as pertaining to 3 subject areas: park, recreation, and fire protection. So I'm a little bit conflicted on this front from the consistency and just our purview. Again, wholeheartedly agree with the sentiment. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
And I think, given that companies and organizations whose business is not ethical / political issues, I mean, any companies really out there that are in public eye have adopted similar statements. So in that respect, I hope that it's not an issue for our little services district.
Thank you, Isabella. Appreciate it.
Jeff, before you move too much farther on this, I mean, Isabella brings a good point in that this isn't an agendized item. This was a statement that you read out loud, and as such, we should probably avoid too much roundabout discussion. I would probably recommend that the statement as read be entered into the minutes, and then if it is requested, we could provide a printed copy as an official agenda item for a more formal adoption.
Okay.
I like that.
Understood. That's not a problem. I was hoping to get some feedback from other board members, given the fact that we did not include this in the agenda this evening. If you would like to defer that conversation until a future agenda item, we can do that.
Yeah, I think it makes me a little nervous going too far in depth into roundabout discussion, and especially any levels of revisions or choosing to adopt or not to adopt without it being an agendized item, as opposed to an item that is simply read into the minutes of the meeting.
Okay, fair enough.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut everybody else off. I'm just trying to be a little bit more
No, thank you.
conscientious of the Brown Act.
You're just
Could
cutting
we-
me off, Eric. Don't take it. I don't take it personally. It's okay.
Could we have that put into the next agenda and have the statement emailed out? And then that way, Jeff, since you did want commentary on it, maybe we can email Eric our comments on that, and then possibly address Isabel's concern about specifically the purview of the CSD, and maybe make sure that the statement is saying that we as a CSD want to make sure that everybody in our district who is using our parks, our recreation, or is getting helped by our fire department is feeling that they are supported as equal.
I
So that
understand.
it makes sure that it stays within the purview of what our district board of directors are supposed to be doing, while also standing up for what's right. Does that sound okay?
Well, I appreciate your viewpoint. I think this particular issue, given the 2 events that I called out, demand thinking outside the box a bit and not being narrowly constrained by our business mission. I think this is something that, given the notoriety our district has received in the last 2 years, it would be incumbent upon us to at least make some sort of statement of support. But we'll postpone this to the next agenda. Will the narrative, if I supply that to Tiffany, be allowed to be put into the written minutes?
Yes.
Okay, I will
Yeah,
do
in fact,
that.
I think we have to, because again, it wasn't an agendized item and you made a statement to lead off. So if you can email it to myself and Tiffany, we'll make sure it gets into the minutes as read.
That's fine. Appreciate
Yeah.
it. Thank
Yep.
you, everybody, for your feedback. Following on that, do we need to open this to public comment or wait for the next agendized meeting?
You actually have no members of the public at this point in time.
Okay, fair enough. We will move on. Thank you again for your comments. Much appreciated. Okay. Moving to consent calendar, item C. Eric and Luke, you may have some narrative that you want to pursue or some explanation you want to pursue with regard to bills paid.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. Before we
Yeah.
get into further discussion or even any other questions, we certainly want to lead off. I mean, obviously, this is a bit of an extraordinary bills paid month. I also think that in looking at it, it doesn't really paint a very complete nor accurate picture, as it seems like there's just a lot of money going out, which is true, but that doesn't represent any of the funds that are coming in, as well as, you know, why those funds are going out. So when you look at the bills paid, and I'm going to ask Luke to chime in a second here, because he's got a lot of the detail in terms of, you know, the active net and the reporting constraints. But as we, you know, you look at the very first payment on the bills paid, it's roughly $675,000 intended for ActiveNet that was provided basically for refunds of people who are on credit cards. All of that funding didn't actually go out. We got a significant portion, about $125,000 of that back directly from that transaction. So, you know, some of the things that I wanted to point out as you look at this, and then followed by the other refunds, and again, Luke will kind of cover up on that, is, you know, even refund is a bit of an odd term. You know, this is more of, you know, a return in that this money was taken in prior to a complete overhaul of all of our program and service offerings. Essentially, it was unearned revenue that ultimately for programs that did not happen. So it was returned when the programs were canceled. It also doesn't take into effect a high amount of money, you know, funds received that were credited and or transferred for people enrolling into other programs. And it doesn't take into account additional revenue that had come in from any of those. And again, they're gross numbers, they're not net numbers. We certainly intend to present a more complete picture when the summer's over of the conclusion of the season and how it goes. But again, I did want Luke to be able to break down some of the details that went into there. So Luke, I'm going to just go ahead and let you take it.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. So yeah, just to explain a little bit the notion of what this pre-fund check at the top of the claims list is we generally in the normal nature of business do issue refunds through our ActiveNet software provider for credit card refunds. We aren't able to process credit card refunds in-house, so it goes through our recreation software provider. And there's always enough revenue coming in and sort of sitting in our account to be able to fund those refunds. But with us canceling virtually all of our spring and summer programs during this pandemic, there was no more revenue continuing to come in. And when we went to go do this mass number of summer camp and pool membership refunds, the revenue had already been paid to us by ActiveNet, so there was nothing remaining in our account with them to actually give money back to our participants. So we basically took the money that had already been paid to us, or the amount that we predicted would need to be refunded for these credit card transactions, and we sent a check to ActiveNet to put into our account so that we could then initiate these refunds via credit card. Otherwise, Tiffany and Eric would have been stuck having to do hundreds upon hundreds of individual check refunds, which is all we're able to do on our end. So that was basically just a way for us to get the money to ActiveNet so that the refunds could take place. As we, they called it pre-funding our account with them. So that's what that first line item is. Was just giving the money back so that we could give it back to our participants through credit card refunds, which is more convenient than us writing checks and having to pay postage on hundreds and hundreds of these transactions that we had to do. There were, as you can see in the rest of the claims list, there are many refunds that were issued via check, and not all of the refunds could be done via credit card, and there's a lot of reasons for that. Some people's credit cards had expired between when they signed up and when we issued the refund. Some people requested that their refund come via check. Some credit cards had been canceled due to fraud and other things. So there's a few different reasons why credit card refunds were not available to us to do for everyone. So that's why we did have a mix of checks going out as well as credit card refunds, and that's represented in this list of lots and lots of individual refunds going on. A lot of people that got refunded for their summer camp registration did end up enrolling in our revised smaller camp that we are currently running, and some of that was a direct transfer that we did in that process, and some of that happened after the fact. So they received a refund and then they ended up getting into camp and paying at a later date. So this is just showing you a picture of us making our participants whole after our programs had to get canceled initially. I think that's, I say, let me know if you have any questions about that.
Yeah, I guess the first question I've got is, it still seems that we wrote a lot of checks, both last month and this 2 previous months. So you're saying that all of these were because credit cards that are expired or no longer valid, and or they requested a check instead of having their credit card credited?
There's a mix. There's a mix of those different things, and also there were a couple instances when the nature of the transaction, because of the way our ActiveNet system works, because we have some sibling discounts and some things that complicate the transaction, taking one person out affected the ability to take the other child out of I don't want to get too complicated with it, but there were a few different types of transactions where we were prevented from issuing a clean credit card refund. The system just sort of blocked us because it wasn't sophisticated enough to handle some of the added discounts and different levels that we have going on. And for those, we just had to issue a blanket check to bypass some of the roadblocks that we ran into, because the system just wasn't able to handle some of these things.
Okay, thank you.
There's also the point that, well, a lot, if I would say even the majority of people pay by credit card. Not everybody pays by credit card initially in the first place either. So you obviously can't refund those people via a credit card when they paid via check, cash, whatever.
So these were not ActiveNet transactions. They were totally between.
Well, everything gets recorded in ActiveNet, but they just didn't use a credit card by which to initiate the transaction. That's not how they paid. Sorry.
Got it. Isabella, you have a question?
Yes, so at the high level, basically, without bugging down into details of ActiveNet intricacies, we pre-funded $675,000 for credit card refunds. We got $125K back from ActiveNet, so that's about $550 that we refunded through ActiveNet. What is the amount that we refunded via check? What's the total at the end of the day? So far, how much money have we refunded?
It depends on exactly which programs we want to look at. If we're just talking about the summer camps, or we're talking about the summer camps in the pool.
Everything total. Everything.
So our entire refunded amount for all things said and done from cancellations this spring and summer, I believe comes to $1,230,000, and that's not including programs that have been signed up for in the meantime, or people that have transferred into our new summer camp or our tennis program that's going on right now. But that's just the programs that were initially canceled and the money that went back to them. That's the gross revenue that went back there.
Yes, thank you.
Other questions from the board?
I just have one stupid question.
Go ahead, Bill.
I'm going to change tack all the way through. And that is it's number 4691, County of Marin Environmental Health. It's a pool facility renewal fee. Do we get anything from Marin County for that fee at all, other than
Yes, we get a bill.
that's it? This
That's
is
it.
this is just a bureaucratic tax.
Well, it's a permit is what it is. So we have to have an annual permit to operate the pool. And that comes through, for the sake of public and community pools, it comes through the environmental health.
Interesting.
Yeah, we pay it every year.
It's kind of a high fee, isn't it? Seems like.
I wish it was lower.
Yeah. Okay. It's a permit to operate. There can't be that many public pools in Marin County that get dinged for this.
Well,
Actually, there are probably quite a few.
yeah, every one of them get dinged for it, and there's a decent amount of pools. And then we're also subject to, although it doesn't have fees associated with it like this one does, but we're also subject to random compliance visits from representatives from environmental health as well.
Okay. That's
Again,
all.
who can speak to that better than I can?
No, I was just piqued my curiosity when I saw that.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Siobhan?
So Luke, so you gave us the total refunded, but next month you should probably have kind of what the operating budget / what our revenue for this summer season for tennis and camp and whatever lap swim money we're going to end up with, right?
Right. Yeah, we will have that all broken down in terms of what we brought in for the programs that we did run and what the expenses were and all
Okay.
of that.
Like next meeting or the meeting after? I don't remember.
It would be the meeting after, most
Okay.
likely, because camps and programs will still be running at the time of the next meeting.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah.
I just couldn't remember with the fiscal year what the cutoff was and if we did anything in between. So, okay,
Right.
sorry.
Any other questions from the board?
Nope.
Okay, one just minor one. Are all these refunds at all complicating the year-end close?
Yes.
Previous.
Complicating isn't probably the word I would use, but making it incredibly more challenging, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and in some ways it makes it a little bit different too. I mean, there's a lot of these monies would have been, had to be turned into deferred revenues and counted toward next year anyway. So, especially in the lines of like pool memberships and aquatics, we won't be carrying over any levels of deferred revenue into there because essentially the unearned revenue wound up needing to be returned because the programs never happened and we never earned the revenue. The summer camp will have 2/3 of the revenue that we brought in from summer camp this year will actually be deferred to next fiscal year, with only 1/3 of it this fiscal year. Even though one of the weeks fell into this fiscal year, all the money was due, payable, and non-refundable last fiscal year for the 3-week session.
Understood. Okay, thank you, Eric.
You're welcome.
Any further questions from the board? Okay, do we have any comment from anyone, any member of the public?
You do. 1 second.
Okay, go ahead, Stephen.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, so looks like we're about ready to have the most disastrous financial year in Marinwood CSD history. That's I don't think that's an understatement. It looks absolutely enormous. Wouldn't be as bad if we didn't do as well as we do in our rec programs, where everyone wants to sign up and we had to issue all these refunds. But nevertheless, we have been planning for this year business to be stable. And I'm just kind of wondering, what's going on. I know all the surrounding municipalities and government agencies did make some staff adjustments during the year. We did not. We retain a full-time staff. The public has paid its dues, paid its taxes, but really hasn't received much of a benefit this year as far as programs and the pool. And I guess now, hearing from Eric, he won't have full reporting until the end of the year. Now, this all strikes me as kind of odd crisis management, where you don't actually know where you're going and you don't actually have a plan to recover. Adding on to this, apparently you want to charge ahead with this maintenance shed proposal, which you have not revealed the cost to the public. And you want to do a tax issue this year. And I guess I want to hear from everyone. I mean, it's kind of incredible to me that you wouldn't make adjustments. I mean, I know a number of you have their own businesses, and you if faced with such a challenge, you would make appropriate adjustments. But why is it any different for the CSD when our business model has blown apart? I guess that's more of a statement than a question. It's kind of shocking. I don't know, actually, I'm not hearing action. I'm not hearing an action agenda. And despite everything that we have this year going on, you know, we still have the pension debt. We still have the healthcare debt to consider. I mean, are you guys planning to go bankrupt? Because it sure looks that way from my perspective. That's all I have to say.
Yeah. Would anybody like to comment? Okay, I think there are some certain misunderstandings. Again, I think at the last meeting, Stephen, in comparing the CSD to municipalities such as San Rafael, for example, the fact that they are, and we never have been, dependent on sales tax dollars insulates us from having to worry about that. Again, when we presented the next year budget, I think we made it clear that aside from the lost revenue, there was also a major reduction in expense as well. So while I agree with you that the pension costs and the OPEB costs are still absolutely an issue for us in the future, in this next year, I think it's been planned out well enough so that this financial disaster that you perceive is likely not going to occur. Okay.
Are we gonna approve the consent calendar, or
Yes, we are.
dilly dally around with this BS?
Thank you, Bill. Any further questions from the board on the consent calendar? Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
Okay, Isabella to approve and Bill to second. Tiffany, if you could take the roll.
Board President Naylor,
Aye.
Director Green.
Aye.
Thank you. Director Oyserman,
Aye.
Director Perry,
Aye.
and Director Shea.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the prompt, Bill. Okay, moving on to item D. Public comment, open time for items not on the agenda.
Oh God, here we go again.
One second.
Okay, Stephen, go ahead.
Thank you. I can't control Bill Shea's behavior, but I think it is extremely disrespectful. These are important issues. You are our representatives, and when we talk about losing money, we're actually talking about you guys making decisions that are going to lose us money. Um, I don't know how, in good conscience, any one of you is able to do your job and hide the fact that you've got a very expensive project going on that you will not reveal or discuss with the community. They came to you in good faith to share, to actually try to get it to be a better project, but unfortunately, you've used your position to conceal what's going on. Now, we're going to see at the end of the day how all this good decision making has been. You can blame it on the lack of sales tax, Mr. Naylor, but the fact of the matter is that has not changed for the entire time of the CSD's existence. We do have a pretty stable cash flow. It's just, you know, you've actually been spoiled by it. There's an election going on. I'm sorry, Isabella, Leah. I don't know if you guys are running, Jeff, but I got to tell you, we plan to discuss this, and I hope each one of you has some good answers and not the BS that we don't have sales tax. You knew this train was coming. You knew this. We were going to have the COVID crisis. You did nothing to curtail expenses. And not only that, you hid the cost of this project so you can enrich a former Marinwood CSD manager, Bill Hansel, and also Irv Schwartz and whoever else. Do you have a piece of it, Bill? I don't know, but you have a responsibility, and it's the same responsibility, as important as the responsibility that you have to your parents. Your parents, your family, and the community at large. This is a grave responsibility, and I don't believe that you guys are really sufficiently engaging the community, engaging in ideas, looking for ways to be responsible financially. And, you know, if you can't do that, you really should think about doing something else for the next 4 years. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Stephen. In the future, when you want to comment on items that are not on the agenda, I wish you would acquaint yourself with the agenda. Everything you just spoke about is on the agenda. Okay, we'll close that issue. Is there anyone else from the public that wishes to speak?
No.
Okay, moving on. Item E, district matters. The Marin County Grand Jury Report, follow-up report on web transparency of agency compensation practices. Approve and authorize the district manager to submit response on behalf of Marinwood. Does anyone on the board have any questions in this regard?
This is for approval. So
It is.
We make a motion to approve.
We do.
Okay.
I would like to make such motion to authorize district manager to submit response on behalf of Marinwood CSD.
I'll second.
Isabella and Sivan, motion and second. Does anyone on the board have any further comment on this item?
I just wanted to add that given that we are not compensated, it's just half of the issue. And thank you, Eric, for improving the link that was present on our website to begin with. Now we got an even better one. That's fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it took me all of 45 seconds to follow through or wade through in 2 clicks. So I think we're all in.
Yeah, the website is quite well laid out. I did some poking around today, too.
Okay, very good. Does anyone in the public have a comment in this regard?
1 second.
Okay, go ahead, Stephen.
Yeah, hi. So actually, I don't have too much to say about this. They're obviously asking for transparency because there's problems with local government being accountable to the citizens. I would suggest, and apparently all of you just want to rubber stamp this and not ask for anything more. I would ask you to think little bit outside the box on how you can basically sell the community on the idea, well, on your programs and your expenditures. I think the only way that you get away with some of this stuff is you don't let people know what's going on. And I mean, this is an opportunity to communicate with the public. You're a public agency, and I hope you take that responsibility seriously. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, if there's no other further comment from either the board or the public, we've had a motion from Isabella, a second from Sivan. Tiffany, if you could take the roll call.
Will, thank you. Board President Naylor.
Aye.
Director Green.
Aye.
Director Oysterman.
Aye.
Director Perry.
Aye.
And Director Shea.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tiffany. Okay, moving on to item E2, the district manager's report. Eric?
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. Just a few other little things in my report for this month, and you kind of touched on some of it. Obviously, we're already working on year-end fiscal close for some of that from last year. So obviously, and as has always been the case, next year we'll present a preliminary P&L statement for fiscal year 1920. Obviously, that goes prior to any level of audit. But usually they fall pretty darn accurate to the end. So that'll be in next month. Special tax assessments are already starting to go with them. That's an annual thing that happens there where we basically reconfirm our tax rolls as provided by the County Department of Finance. And then I'm going to not touch too much on this because I'm sure Chief White has plenty more to say. But just a lot of involvement and work by a lot of people on getting some of these vegetation management and defensible space projects going. And I'm not sure if any of you went out to take a look, but we had a little over 400 goats that were out grazing last month along from Queenstone Fire Road all the way behind Miller Creek Road, up and around and all the way down Idleberry Road. And we got a lot of really good feedback and people really happy to go out and see the goats, not to mention just pleased with the job of bringing the goats out for the purpose that they were brought out for, which went a little bit beyond take your kids to go see these cool goats.
Very good.
Yep.
Board questions. Sivan?
No, I was saying we went to see the goats.
Oh, well, thanks for that report. Okay. Does anyone else on the board have a question for Eric on his report?
Nope.
Okay, I have one question. I thought when the MWPA was sold to the public that the intention was to borrow the money up front since the tax revenue wouldn't come in until after the fire season, so that a lot of this work could be done. There's a statement in your report that seems to indicate that we will not be doing any of this work until after the tax revenue comes in.
No, well, we're doing the work and we're aiming for the work, but we will be reimbursed for the work. So essentially the money is going to come in the arrears. They did borrow some of the money from the county at a cost, more for the core functions of it. Which are much larger numbers than what we're at right now. We're just looking at the 64,400 for the local designated. And I've been working with Chief White's team on the defensible space. And then to be clear on that, and again, Chief White can jump in on this with his report, as I know he's got some topics on MWPA. That's really looking at residential defensible space and not as much as wide open space, defensible space, and vegetation management zone. So that's going to be more a project for homeowners than it is for districts, for agencies, so to speak. Yet it'll be coordinated through districts and other municipalities.
Okay, well, thank you for clarifying. That was probably my misunderstanding.
No, I think I don't think you misunderstood, Jeff. I think that that was part of their intention. And then I think that the other thing that they came up with was that the MWPA ultimately wanted to have as much funding as possible throughout the 10-year life of this. And rather than start in the hole by borrowing money to, have to pay back with an interest rate associated with it, they pulled all the agencies, at least on the defensible space and the local jurisdiction fundings, to see if agencies had cash flow to move forward with these projects, knowing that they would get reimbursed. And at their most recent meeting, the board of directors for the MWPA, and Leah, feel free to jump in, approved the projects that were submitted and recommended by the operations committee of the MWPA. So that gave us the go ahead to start moving forward with these projects.
Okay, I understand. Thank you. Appreciate it. Anyone else on the board have a question for Eric? Okay, questions from the public.
Yeah, 1 second.
Yes, Steve.
Yes, hi. So I do have some questions concerning the Wildlife Prevention Authority, but I think I'm going to wait till Chief White gives his presentation on that. I just want some clarification. Now, I do have a question concerning a special tax assessment, and I guess I don't understand what that is. Is that what we talked about last month, or is this a new assessment that will be coming our way? Can you give me a little bit more information, Eric?
Yeah, there are no new assessments, nor will there be any tax measures on the ballot. These are for our existing special taxes to pay for park, open space, and street landscape maintenance, as well as our fire protection and emergency response tax.
I guess I still don't get it. We were talking about approving the expenditure of taxes last month, and you're saying that those tax measures aren't going to happen. I know what a tax assessment is. It's a bill, and so I guess I don't understand. Maybe it's how you're using the wording here, but what I understand it to be is that we're going to receive a tax bill. Are you above and beyond what we normally receive? Is that correct?
No. It's the same tax bill you've been receiving for many years.
So why are you calling a special tax assessment?
Because that's what they're called. They're special assessments and special taxes. That's the terminology of what it is. A special assessment goes beyond a general ad valorem in both of these, and typically are voter approved, as both of these were.
Excuse me for interrupting. Isn't the intent of your report to indicate that when we plan the next fiscal year budget, we anticipate what those special tax amounts are going to be, and then at a later date, we get a much truer figure of what they're going to be? Is that correct?
Yeah, they true up every year based on what is on file with the county Department of Finance and their tax rolls. Ours are relatively stable, realizing that the special tax for fire is based on square footage, and every now and then you have an increase in square footage amongst some homes or businesses. And our park tax is based on units, and occasionally you'll get an additional ADU, like an accessory dwelling unit, that gets added as a registered second unit. So we don't have any of that information. So when they're budgeted out, they're budgeted at the current year, realizing that we get the tax rolls from the county this time of year. In fact, I literally just got them in today to review, to go over, and then it updates ours, and then I sign them and submit them. But these are not new. These are all existing taxes that were all voter approved. This isn't anything above and beyond. They are called a special tax, or in some senses, they're also called special assessments. Those terms are interchangeable.
Can I want to really just absolutely nail this. So basically what you're saying, Eric, is this, all your, in the section that you're called special tax assessments, all you're talking about is a budgeting function. You're just looking at how much money that you expect to come in. Is that correct? And I do know that last month we were talking about a statutory increase. So, you know, maybe you're using words a little differently than I, but I see more taxes, a higher tax bill because of things that you've done this year. And you're saying that that's not true. It's
So,
as the same as it was last year. Are you saying that, Eric?
Stephen, I think that what Eric,
I'm asking Eric because Eric's responsible. But you can answer, but I'd like to hear from Eric first, if that's okay.
go ahead.
Last month was an appropriations limit. It does not affect nor change the level of special taxes that go out. So
It's a tax increase, though.
no, it's not. No, Stephen, it is not a tax increase. You are not correct in that understanding.
Higher dollar amounts. Is that helpful?
Okay, if you'll let me finish, I will
Okay.
do my best to explain this to you.
Okay.
Okay, last month was
Thank you.
Last month was an appropriations limit measure. That measure is also known as a spending limit. It has nothing to do with the amount of taxes actually levied. It has to do with the amount of taxes received that the district is allowed to expend. Those are two different things. This special tax assessment is the park tax and the fire tax, of which when they were budgeted in, which was approved, I guess, in May, or actually June, I think it was finally approved. Actually, the budgeted amounts of these were approved several months ago. The county keeps their records. The taxes are based on the records that come from the county, one of which is based on square footage of property. Another one is based on number of units per parcel. None of that has changed. So unless you have added on to your home, your rate is not going to be any different than based on the same amount of square footage that it was based on last year, or based on having one unit on your parcel.
Well, with all due respect, we have a financial disaster this year, and how are we going to make up for that financial disaster? You can't just lose $1 million and build a $500,000 or $750,000, whatever this Hansel project's going to cost. You can't do that, you know, with smoke and mirrors. You got to have money, and I assume that you're going to try to raise taxes to or bonds or something else to pay for everything. I don't see how we can do it any other way. But and I once again I ask every month, but I really like to know how this little project's going to work. I think you owe it to us, the people, me and the 6,000 people behind me.
Okay, Stephen, thank you very much for the comment.
So, so it's a comment. It's actually a request for you guys to be transparent on your finances, because it's very clear you're losing a lot of money and you don't have a strategy. Very clear.
What is clear is that you continue to misinterpret everything we talk about at these meetings.
I'm not misinterpreting anything. I saw the numbers.
Okay.
Yes, $1 million loss is $1 million loss, Jeff. Same is true when you work for the bank.
You do not understand the difference between cash flow and income statements. I'm
That's
sorry,
very patronizing, but actually I do. Thank you.
No, you don't. It's very clear. Thank you for your comment. We're moving on. Okay. Moving on to fire department matters. The draft minutes, F1 draft minutes of the Fire Commission meeting, July 7th, 2020. Does anyone have any comment, questions on the draft minutes? So I understand, Chief, that the consideration of sirens is being, as opposed to something that's being discussed at the Fire Commission level, is being discussed in MWPA. Is that correct?
That's my understanding, and that would be, I believe, part of the core allocation, more than likely based on the potential expenditure.
I see. Okay, fair enough. I'm sure we'll be talking about MWPA a little bit later. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions with regard to the Fire Commission meeting?
Just a statement that there was a lot of discussions on various things that can be done so that we have the ability to evacuate and let people know that they needed to evacuate, so we didn't have the same situation that happened in Paradise. And we started to do some research, but due to the fact that the NWPA got passed, I think the Fire Commission stepped back, and I said, we can continue, but I don't think it's a good idea to make recommendations to the board and push this further when it's going to be a countywide, if I understand correctly, Chief White, that they're going to recommend something countywide, so that's not a piecemeal thing, and it possibly might be all centered in one place, so they push out the alerts, and we don't have to have anybody on site here when we have not that many firefighters on site here anyways. They'll be busy doing other things, and they won't be able to do, now this street leave, now that street leave. So that's why there was no recommendations or anything. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions with regard to the draft minutes of this July 7th meeting? Okay. Seeing nothing else, we'll move on to F2. Appointment of Marinwood CSD Board Director to serve as the Marinwood alternate on the MWPA Board of Directors.
Yeah, I gave a little staff report here, and Leah, if you wanted to jump in. I mean, at the end of the day, I think after it was written and designed and stated how the board of directors would be made up after the fact. When the board first got together, they quickly realized that there are no alternates written into the makeup of the board, and especially with the very complex way that voting is counted and calculated within the board, they quickly realized that having an alternate for each agency would be highly advisable in the event that the primary representative is unable to attend a meeting or some other function in that capacity.
Okay.
What time are the meetings again, Leah?
They're the third Thursday of the month from 3 to 5 p.m. And the first couple meetings were very long, but I have complete confidence that they will get shorter as it kind of gets going. And there's, yeah, it's a little bit more work. I mean, yeah, it's brand new.
Yeah.
And they're Zoom meetings, yes?
Yes.
Have they clarified that moving forward, they're always going to be on the third Thursday? Because I know the ops committee added that into their bylaws as well.
I think so, and there was a little bit of discussion at the last meeting about changing the time, and then there was some significant pushback from a couple of existing board members saying that they couldn't do it if they changed the time to later in the day. So I think for now it's pretty safe to say that, you know, the Thursday 3 to 5 is somewhat fixed.
And they just won't happen on the same months. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Bill, you had said that you were interested at one point. Are you still interested?
You want to rephrase that? Was that a question for Bill Shea?
Yeah. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't care.
Okay. I'm giving you the option. 3 to 5 is a little hard for me. So, but I do remember you had
3 to 5
three
is
of us.
hard for me too, since
Okay.
I work for a living. So it doesn't matter. I mean, it is what it is. It's got to make time. That's all. That's fine.
Okay. So Bill,
I mean, I can do it.
you're willing to be appointed as the alternate?
At your bequest.
You're a gentleman and a scholar. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank
Okay.
you, Bill.
No, we don't have to vote on that, right? We made an appointment. Right?
Yeah,
Or do you
you just need to open it. I mean, you don't have anybody who wants to make a public comment at this point in time, but no, you don't necessarily need a vote on it. You, as the board president, certainly have the power to appoint to other committees and such.
Very good. Okay, well, let's move on then.
Okay.
Okay, item F3, Chief Officer Report and Activity Summary. Chief?
Well, good evening, Marinwood Board of Directors and members of the public. It's good to be with you again. I'll try to give you the highlights of my report, and if you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer any questions you may have. Want to go start with the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority and just give a quick reminder about the 4 core programmatic areas that we're not really putting a lot of emphasis on right now, and then really focus more on the 2 additional areas that District Manager Drykerson spoke to regarding the defensible space and the local agency specific funding, because that's where the bulk of our work is coming from right now in Marinwood. And so we've got the 60% is the core allocation. So that's really the bulk of the funding that Marinwood is receiving. And it's estimated at approximately $322,000, which I see I missed putting the dollar sign in front of that number. So that was an oversight on my part. Defensible space is another 20% at approximately $64,412, as is the local agency specific 20%, estimated at the same amount of $64,412. And so we've actually submitted multiple projects for Marinwood, including goat grazing and some mechanical clearing of defensible space in areas of Ellen Drive and Las Gallinas Avenue, as well as Idleberry to Blackstone. We've also submitted some projects for approval for the Elvia Court area, wildland urban interface areas. And the purpose of that was to create a shaded fuel break in the open space that borders private property. And so I'm happy to say that it appears at this point that all of the CEQA, California Environmental Quality Act, paperwork was submitted, and it was done in 3 primary categories, including the goat grazing, evacuation routes, and open space. The executive officer recruitment, I think from what I understand, they've narrowed it down to less than half a dozen candidates. And just spoken with the city manager of San Rafael, and it looks like I may actually be serving on that panel for the candidate interview process. So we'll see how that turns out if I'm actually given that opportunity. So I'll keep you updated as I learn more. On another note, when it comes to our vegetation management, I want to make sure that I give you the great news that effective Thursday, we'll have 5 of the 6 candidates actually on site obtaining their initial orientation and training as defensible space seasonal inspection staff. This was an expedited effort after I mentioned before, Marin County was not able to assist us with their inspection staff. And so we've made it a little more attractive to some of the candidates. We had roughly 30 plus applicants initially. We narrowed the field to roughly 10 or 11 quickly, and then narrowed it down further to the final 6. And those individuals range from a former CHP officer to a former firefighter to individuals who are interested in fire prevention as a long-term career option. They all seem to be motivated. They all seem to be very capable and inclined to learn and do their best to reduce the risk in our community. And so I'm really looking forward to meeting them on Thursday. I have a brief orientation welcoming that I'm going to speak to the individuals. And there's a possibility, I'm not sure at this point, but I might be providing direct oversight over them initially. Although I don't head up the inspection program, they need to report to somebody. And based on our organizational hierarchy and structure, we're kind of thin in some areas, so I may actually just take on the responsibility of overseeing their efforts directly for some period of time. I'll still use the benefit of our vegetation management inspection staff and our emergency manager because they're far more familiar with the community and the areas of Marinwood and elsewhere. But as far as ensuring that I'm checking in them on their report times, the quality of their work, and or their request for any leave that they may have over the next few months, they'll be reporting more than likely directly to me, unless I'm able to input another individual that I'm hoping we can put in place pretty quickly, which is a wildfire mitigation and emergency preparedness specialist. So depending on how quick we can onboard that, the job announcement just went out earlier this week. Looks like at least initially I have a hands-on role in that. And so it's really encouraging because we now have up to 8 inspection staff out in the field getting work done in a way that we had not been able to historically from quite some time, from what I understand. So I'm really encouraged by that. I'll skip on to some of the other things that have happened. I'm going to go straight to AmeriCorps cruise. I think we may have spoken on this briefly last month, but We've been very fortunate to receive the AmeriCorps St. Louis crews who are, they come very prepared and skilled in areas of mechanical fuel reduction. They've been actively working in Marinwood and in San Rafael. And as of the 4th of July, they rotated out a couple of personnel and a few more have arrived. And so we're upwards of 10 people right now actually working in multiple areas of the community along with the goat grazing that's taking place. So really thrilled to have them on board. I think this was our emergency manager, Quinn Gardner, who's had a lot of historical involvement with AmeriCorps personnel, been able to secure effective working relationships with them for some time. And they appear very motivated and they're getting a lot of work done. And so this is just a force multiplier to our efforts to try to draw down risk as quickly as we can, using MWPA funding as well. I don't think they're slated to be here much more than maybe another month or so, but there's a possibility they may be coming back later, sometime in perhaps late August or September, to do a second wave of several weeks of work. So I'm really hopeful that we can make that happen. Not in this report is also our efforts to try to negotiate arrangements with the Delta crews from CAL FIRE. Right now we're having some difficulty with that, and I think it's partly because there's a possibility that those crews may be working some fires, so their availability becomes kind of sporadic or intermittent depending on whether or not there's major working incidents taking place elsewhere in the state. So I'm really hopeful that we can get them on board as well so we can start clearing a variety of locations such as some of our fire roads and some of the other areas that we could certainly use the benefit of their efforts, because they are, I won't say beasts, but they are really just phenomenal at the work that they do, and they work hard. So, and you can't beat the price. So I'll leave it at that. Let's get back to a live fire training burn that you guys probably are aware of, going back to June 19th, where we had Battalion Chief Graham Groneman from Marin County was doing a training burn that unfortunately blew right into the area where some of the kids' camp activities were taking place. He thought that the wind direction was going to shift that afternoon, and unfortunately his projections were inaccurate, and that wind and that plume continued to affect the Marinwood community for a little while. After our conversation, he was very apologetic. He had acknowledged that something similar had occurred a couple of years before, and he would try to work closely with Luke Fretwell and Robin Bruton, Parks and Rec staff, or recreational director rather, and assistant rec directors, to see what they could do to move and coordinate their efforts in the future, so that they don't have a repeat problem like this perhaps later this year and the next season. He immediately moved the operation to Novato and just figured he'd start getting some potential complaints from the Novato community depending on the wind direction at that point. I don't know how that worked out for him, but it certainly made it clear to him that we had our concerns and we'd like to see some level of coordination in the future. And if it appears that there's going to be a problem, then maybe we need to discontinue and reschedule that type of activity elsewhere. So again, very apologetic, but very willing to try to be collaborative in how we move forward and provide that very essential training. Well, COVID-19. Needless to say, things have been changing or in flux for the past several weeks here, and unfortunately things have increased exponentially in a way that we had really hoped it wouldn't. And based on that, we saw the opening of some businesses, we saw outdoor dining, we saw even some indoor dining as possibilities, and all since this report was generated, there's been some return to shelter-in-place requirements and or certain businesses not being permitted to do just some of those things I spoke to, such as barbershops, salons, movie theaters, gyms, all of these areas that we thought were going to be open for business in some scaled down version or some variation on what was once permissible prior to the shelter-in-place order is now reverted back to that based on the significant increase, not just in Marin County, but the entire Bay Area, the state, and to some degree elsewhere in the country. And so because of that, we're looking at new guidance that's probably going to be offered up again, I understand, in maybe the next 3 weeks after they evaluate whether or not things start to flatten out again or whether or not this trend continues upward for some period of time. And so with that, we're encouraging staff to do everything in their power to continue to practice exceptional hygiene, social distancing. I have to tell you, unfortunately, just earlier this past week, or later this past week, roughly about a week ago, we had an incident where our San Rafael personnel were involved with a law enforcement assist that ultimately led to those individuals being sheltered in place, isolated for the next 2 weeks, because they came in contact with a combative patient who actually bit one individual, not one of our firefighters, but one of the law enforcement officers, and was yelling. And in the course of yelling, saliva was spewing a little bit here and there. And our personnel were in direct contact without the benefit of the level of protection we would have liked for mask and or goggles. Those individuals, we found out immediately after that individual was taken to Kaiser that he tested positive for COVID. So as a precaution, we've isolated our members and they're being tested. And then at some point, the 14-day period will be over, I think roughly on the 22nd, or roughly about 8 days out. So given that sometimes the unexpected can occur, we're revisiting what we can do in the future, but I don't fault our personnel because they were doing what I thought was the appropriate thing, which was going and directly assisting the officer who was in need of assistance at that moment. And there was no other law enforcement personnel around to assist right at that point. So with that, as you can see, even when your best laid plans are put out there and you're following them closely, you know, for the last 3+ months or longer, the unknown and the unexpected can happen. And so been trying to provide support to those individuals. I understand there's a mental health component to this with the uncertainty, with the being isolated, with just the fear that can, and anxiety that can take place from not knowing whether or not you're going to come up positive after such an interaction. So my prayers are with those personnel, and we're doing our best to communicate with them and provide them the support that they need right now. 2 have decided to isolate at a local hotel. 1 has decided to isolate at home. So I'll know more hopefully by the time we meet again, and hopefully I can share excellent news that none of them have shown positive or are symptomatic at all. Yes, and so with that, there's been a scale down, ironically, with the timing in that they had 3 disinfection sites and they scaled down to 1, and they actually started to provide kits for crews and station personnel to actually disinfect areas themselves instead of relying on the drive-through or the drive-up assist sites that were located in the Novato and in Marin Catholic. So I think the only one that's still open is at the Marin Center, the Ava Flags. And so with that, we at least have something still operational. I don't know that there's going to be a need to expand back. I think initially, until personnel receive training and or competency on how to actually effectively disinfect their areas and their apparatus and equipment, this was probably a good approach. Moving forward, I think our personnel are gotten pretty much acclimated to how to disinfect and clean their areas on their own. But I have to imagine that if there is a COVID outbreak, we'll probably bring in the professionals to come in and do a thorough job and not rely on our personnel. So we just hope that that's not going to be the case. On June 4th, we had a suspected arsonist. He lit off behind the Marinwood Market a delivery truck that was parked in the rear. Video footage that was provided by the Sheriff's Department actually showed a kind of a silver BMW SUV with 2 or 3 individuals in the vehicle. Sometime around midnight or so. I don't have any updates on what's going on with that investigation. I have to assume that, you know, since they got pretty good footage and a good time to locate that vehicle passing in the area, that there's got to be camera footage or something somewhere else that can track that vehicle back to a specific individual. And so I'm looking to follow up on this. I wanted to give it a little bit of time to let the investigators do their due diligence, and then I'm going to place a request for additional information. So we don't see something like this replicated again, if at all possible. PG&E also is going airborne in Marin County effective July 21st, next Tuesday. And their intent is to actually continue to inspect their transmission lines and other distribution lines that they're able to see from an aerial standpoint. They'll have 2 different helicopters, or at least 2 of the helicopters that I'm aware of that they'll be flying in our area are the ones pictured inside the report. One is a Hughes, looks like McDonnell Douglas 500 and a McDonnell Douglas 600, and then the other is a Bell helicopter. They say they may not be the exact same tail numbers, but they'll be these type of aircraft you can expect they'll be probably flying at a lower ceiling than normal, just so they can do the inspections that they want to do to ensure that their lines are intact and able to withstand potentially a branch or something falling down on them or some other, issue with high winds. I didn't get a chance to really get a lot more information about how they intend to look at a line from a helicopter. I don't know if they're looking to power it and see if there's some infrared or some interruption somehow with some special heat sensing equipment. I'm not really clear on that. I should have asked Jim Wickman today. I had a chance to meet with him for the first time, who's the PG&E rep for the county and for the fire chiefs. That didn't cross my mind because we were talking about something else, but I'll certainly circle back to him and try to get more information. And then last but not least, we have the statistics for the month of June. And I believe from what we can see, the call volume may be a little bit low, but the response times are excellent. 5 minutes and 28 seconds, average response time. I think that's a testament to the crews and their ability to get right out the door. One of the things I really stress and tell everybody is if your turnout time is great, your response time is going to be great. So the quicker you getting out of the facility onto the apparatus and out onto the road, the better off the outcomes could potentially be. So with that, if there's any questions, I'm more than happy to respond.
Anybody on the board? Very thorough report. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Just one quick question on the COVID-19 spiking that's going on right now. I know there was conversation at the commission level about reintroducing the volunteers. Is that sort of going in the opposite direction given the spike, or what's going on there?
I think at this point, I'm just looking to learn more about the program and get in conversation with Captain Papanicolaou and also Battalion Chief Stilson. And so with that, I don't want to rule it out completely, but I also have concerns that, if we needlessly expose someone, then, we've done more harm than good. And so if there's going to be a conversation about how to look at that volunteer program and make it effective somehow, I just want to make sure we're doing our due diligence to not put anyone in harm's way needlessly, especially since they're volunteering and they're not paid because there's worker comps concerns. And I'm not sure how volunteers would tie into a FEMA reimbursement request for agencies who have to assume the burden of using volunteer personnel and somehow or another owning a situation that could have been prevented. So I need to do a little more research. And as I indicated to Chief Stilson and Captain Papanicolaou, this is a learning opportunity for me. I come from a paid background my entire career. I have had really no volunteer experience. And although I'm familiar with some volunteers, and some of my friends in Nevada, for instance, are volunteers, I've never worked firsthand administratively with volunteer staff to know what parameters I need to be considerate of. And so I want to be cautious, but yet still explore any options that exist.
Understood. Thank you very much, Chief.
Can I say one quick thing? I think mostly the point, because the fact that the COVID's still going on, was more of that when the chief has time, Greg wanted to sit down with him to tell him, and with Captain, I'm going to butcher his name, so I'm just going to say P.
Nicola?
Yeah.
I think I said it right. I could be wrong.
That basically they were wanting to really more, when he has time, sit down and really talk to him via Zoom or whatever it is about what our volunteer program is and what they've done in the past, so that when they feel more comfortable. There was no discussion about putting them back on a truck anytime yet, or back even in the facility to answer calls or anything. That's my understanding of the meeting.
It seemed like in the minutes, it was a little bit more aggressively noted. They're ready to go, so to speak. But okay.
It was aggressively noted that they can't wait to get back on the truck and get back to helping, but they totally understand that they have to sit there going like this and wait because they can't come.
Okay. You've addressed the concern. Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Any other questions from the board for the chief? Anything from the public?
Yeah, 1 second.
Yes, Stephen.
Hi, Chief White. First of all, I want to congratulate you. you know, we're going through a crisis. It seems like you're handling stuff really well. What a year to learn on the job. So pat yourself on the shoulders. I think you're doing well. I have a few questions concerning defensible space, and then some questions regarding the COVID crisis. First of all, the defensible space, there's two aspects of it. There's the CSD open space, that would be our defensible space stuff. And then there's the individual homeowners. And I think you addressed the homeowners, but I'd like to know do you have anything specifically for the CSD, the open space? And in particular, because I know Ron his last name is escaping me, but you know who I'm talking about. He loves lots of cleared areas so fire doesn't get close to his neighborhood. But what is the defensible space that you're using for our open space?
I can give you a little bit of information on some of what I believe is going to speak specifically to your question. I was actually putting this in next month's report because it's information that just surfaced to me a couple of days ago, and it's regarding the use of what they call TAM crews. And they're looking to work somewhere in the Cedar Hill Drive and Partridge Drive Creek and Aries Lane areas. So if I'm not mistaken, that may be the open space areas that you're referring to, as opposed to defensible space. And so with that, this is upcoming work that's going to be behind the homes in those areas. And I don't have a whole lot of detail to provide for you right now, but I can say that I believe they were starting yesterday.
Oh, okay. Well, specifically, I know Ron wanted a 150-foot swath just cut out of our open space, which is absolutely a huge amount of land. And I know the county, Marin County Open Space, and many environmental groups were very concerned on hearing that. You know, there are competing interests here. So I don't know if you settled it's going to be a 20-foot swath or a 150-foot swath, or the crews are going to just, you know, do what they think is needed. So it sounds like you don't have anything specific on that. Is that correct?
Well, I can tell you that I do have a map that shows an area that basically is, you know, going back to Terra Linda, Sleepy Hollow Divide behind the homes, moving, I would say, in a northwestern.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the map. That's okay. I guess what I'm talking about is a policy.
Yeah, but what I'm looking at, I can't give you specific footage or feet. I can just give you a rough guesstimate, and I would be, you know, really just giving you a guesstimate based on what I'm seeing here, that I'm guessing at least 50 to 80 feet in some areas, and other areas looks like maybe even as little as 20 or 30 feet, and then expands again depending on, I guess, what the terrain is and what the foliage is. And so I don't know that there's a single prescribed footage. I think it's all contingent on what they're facing in those areas. So it could expand in some areas and could contract in others.
Okay.
But if you see my report next month, you'll be able to see specifically what those areas are that are outlined currently. But well, I don't see anything that speaks to the actual foot.
Yeah, I know that the guidelines are they want 100 feet from the dwelling, but Ron had interpreted that as 100 feet from 150 feet from the from our border fence, which, I mean, basically you'd clear cut all of our park, a lot of our parkland. Okay, so let's move on. I want to talk.
Can I offer this also before you move on? I haven't heard of any clear cutting taking place. I think people are looking at maybe thinning or at least limbing up areas. I don't know that they're looking to clear cut. That would be news to me.
Okay. All right.
Stephen, let's conclude those comments.
No, I have three areas. He spoke quite long. I would like to talk also about the defensible space and homeowners. You're probably aware, or maybe you're not, that can create a bit of conflict in the community. There was a effort made a number of years ago, and homeowners would say, get out the juniper bushes, this, that, and the other thing, and it was horrendously expensive. I guess I'd like to know specifically what kinds of directives, what would be an example of an order, like cut off an overhanging branch or something like that? What are your officers going to be looking for?
Are you asking what are the new inspection staff going to be looking at?
Yes, yeah.
I think they're going to be looking at a variety of things. I think they're going to look at proximity of trees to the chimney as an example. I think they're going to be looking at proximity from defensible space, whether it's 30 feet to the rear or 50 feet or 100 feet to the rear of the home. I think they're going to look at the laddering of fuels, for example. Do you have ground fuels that are too tall that can actually catch the brush, which in turn can catch low-hanging limbs, and then they can actually run on the crown of trees? And so I think the idea that we're trying to ensure that there's a safe footprint on each home, and the ability to educate the homeowner about what we're looking at and why we think it's hazardous to not only them, but to the entire neighborhood. So there's multiple things that our staff will be trained on to observe and to report back on and or look for compliance and opportunities to educate.
Yeah, I mean, potentially I know some people would have to clear quite a bit of trees out of their backyard. But
okay, thank you, Stephen, for your comments.
The other question is on the COVID.
Okay, Eric.
Can I continue?
No, you can't. You've now had
this is the only public meeting that you have. I just really have a question on the COVID, and
I've had it. Okay, we're moving on. Thank you, Chief.
You're welcome.
Item F4, next Fire Commission meeting, August 4th. We're moving on. Park and Rec matters, item G. Item G1, Park Maintenance Facility Replacement Project. Do we have Bill with us?
We do. 1 second here, please. He's coming through, and right now you just got to give this 1 second for modern technology to catch up to us. All right, good.
Hey there, just give me 1 second here.
Yeah, no problem. While Bill gets set up, so obviously we put in a detailed staff report on what's going on, and then included some other graphs. One of the primary things to be talking about today is kind of the schedule and what we're looking at, and how we've kind of come up with it, as well as some other little steps that'll kind of be happening through here, and then some things that are going to help us better prepare and also be able to really start to examine and look at cost factors and determination processes for this project as a whole. So with that said, thank Bill in advance. He has definitely put a lot of time and work, especially these last couple months once we got reopened back up, working with the structural engineers, with the geotechnical engineers, and trying to keep this moving forward, and then building a schedule that, while is, for lack of a better term, aggressive, I also think that it is accomplishable. And he sat down and has met with Luke and myself, and we have in turn looked at the, met with the park department. And the other thing I want to bring to point, just briefly before we get into this, is as we're looking at kind of prepping the site, that's going to involve, the demolition of the existing buildings and the moving of the shed, and more importantly, and to the point, our need to create a temporary working assignment not working assignment, work area for the staff for what could be, several months during the construction process. So that was the secondary piece that was added in here that we'll get to. I just wanted to touch that now so we don't forget to circle back to that point. With that said, I want to ask Bill to kind of come in and talk through this schedule with the board as he has and met with myself and staff already.
Welcome, Bill.
Thank you. Good to see you all. I'll just review this pretty quickly. The areas in orange are the engineering and detailing portions of the project that we're currently in. We had a delay because of the soils engineer being able to do their drilling work. That went well when it eventually happened. Well, meaning that the bedrock is not far below the surface, which is great because it leads us to be able to design conventional spread footings, which are less expensive than drilled piers. So that all looks good, and we're moving forward with structural engineering. The goal is to submit for a building permit, which is in the red bars, which would be the beginning of August. The current situation with the county and the building department is a little bit hard to predict. They are accepting drawings. Normally what happens is before we actually submit for a project, this portion of the project, so the second component after you get planning approval, we would submit, we would have a meeting just to kind of go over what the package is that's going to be submitted. I can't do that at this time because they're just taking drop-off submittals of the drawings. And so the sort of back and forth, which helps to facilitate a little bit of the schedule, is not there these days. I have in the project about 3 months of building approval time. So these are the life safety issues of the project, not the planning. And so it's not for any more approval of scope or size or look or anything else like that. It's all reviewing the structural drawings, the life safety issues, energy requirements, etc. So it's a technical package that's being put together. And you can see where the hope is that in a normal world that would happen. We'd have approvals by December, beginning of December. We'll just have to see how that goes. There normally is some back and forth when we submit. You get different plan checkers. Sometimes the county does, depending upon the number of submittals going on, they will contract out the plan checking to a private company. That can also change the schedule. So, but in the meantime, the things that we do have control over would be the items that we're trying to plan during that time of plan check at the county. The first big one is the site preparation, which are the green bars shown in the schedule, and that would include the first thing being the tree removal, relocation of the trailer, emptying the shed, all the things that I've been looking to Eric and Luke to help me to understand, what timetable they need. So this reflects obviously their requirements. The hope is that would be done by the end of September. And what this allows us to do, which is really helpful for this project, is to try to get the site all cleaned up prior to issuing our drawings for bids. The package that'll be created for the beginning of August that I mentioned, which is the building permit package, that essentially is what is needed finally to really understand what the market value of this project is going to be. And between the submittal of those drawings and while the cleanup of the site is happening, we'll put together the bid package, which we're going to be very strategic about. We're going to have a base package, which is all of the essential items that, they're totally non-discretionary. The concrete slab, the roof, the structural components, all of that stuff. But we'll break out into a series of ads, different pieces that we'll be able to, when we finally get the bids back, we'll be able to be a little bit more selective and understand the bidding. A lot of the challenge with a public bid process is really understanding what you get back in return and trying to compare different bids so that you're looking at apples to apples prices. So the more that we're strategic about breaking out items such as skylights and clear stories and windows and the fences and the finishing of the bathroom, the finishing of the cabinetry, all those things, we'll have more of a menu to choose, pick and choose from. That bidding process would be a 30-day process. What I was going to say about the advantage of cleaning up the site is that by having that done by the time that the bidding starts, we'll have about a week in to proposals, to the documents being available, we'll be able to have a site visit. And it is going to be very helpful to show the contractors a blank, clean site. So that way it won't convolute the price of the building with interpretations of demo costs and other kinds of cleanup, which frankly, doesn't really need to be a part of that same contract. When the bids are returned, then it's let's see, receive bids would be October 21st. We would then have a couple weeks to have conversations, check insurance requirements, et cetera, and really sort of put a comparison package together of all the bids and a selection of the recommendations for how to proceed, and we'd be able to bring all of that to the November board meeting for action. If things go according to the schedule in terms of that process, we would then, if the county was able to do all of their reviews and approvals by December, we could move then into a notification to proceed for contracts for the awarded contractor, and we'd be able to start construction as early as December. If the county takes longer, then obviously that would slide those dark green or olive colored bars back appropriately. What I have in terms of the construction schedule is, again, this is pending reactions from the actual bidders, but would be that the building envelope could mostly be done between December and March over that 4-month period. And when the building envelope, the roof, the walls were closed in enough, then some of the interior work could proceed, even though the interior is going to be fairly stripped down and straightforward. So we would be looking at, according to this, finishing up by the middle of May. The punch list is basically when we walk through and do quality control on items to pick apart what needs to be touched up or refinished or replaced, or any things that aren't up to the standards of the specifications and the drawings. And that usually is a couple weeks process, maybe a little bit more depending upon the contractor's schedule at that time. And then we'd have landscape restoration and trying to wrap all this up by the beginning of June, so that in again, a normal world with camps, et cetera, that we would hopefully not have this project or any of the work on that side of the park interfere with the summer activities of the district. There is a construction contingency and weather contingency and just about everything else in here of a couple of months, which I think is prudent to include. So if any of those things I've noted, the county, weather, any other unforeseen conditions happen, we could see this moving back into September. So, or mid-September, October for a finish date. I think that covers the schedule. And if you want to discuss any further questions about that, I'd be happy to before maybe we talk about the specific interim measures, which is the temporary plan.
Very good. Anybody on the board have questions for Bill at this point? Okay, Bill, I was happy to talk to you about this specifically before the meeting, and you answered just about every question I could think of. So
okay.
Well thought out. Thank you. You want to talk about the temporary?
Sure. Well, this is really, let me scroll over to it. So a couple things here. Eric and Luke can speak better to how this, how they want to utilize this space, but this was my suggestion in terms of moving the trailer to this location between the Gaga pit and the sidewalk, and effectively it would allow the staff to continue using it. This would be hooked up with electrical, but obviously not, the bathroom would not be, or the kitchen would not be utilized at all. It would just be a dry trailer, and could be used for staff. And then by placing strategically a few other rented or purchased containers, you could create a temporary yard and fence that off and put privacy cloth on the inside of the fencing and basically keep it completely out of the way of the construction traffic and movement. There was also a suggestion, which may or not be utilized, which is that the trailer could be offered to the construction company as a construction trailer, which they may be requiring and including in their costs. And if we could supply that, it would just save us money. But on the other hand, the square footage that's represented here and shown is probably still challenging the district's physical requirements for during this this period where the work's happening. So I'm not sort of counting on it. It was just a suggestion.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Any questions from the board on the temporary? Yeah, go ahead, Isabella.
Hi, Bill. Thank you for your presentation. I have two questions. First is you mentioned the plan or the agenda mentions that there will be pine trees removed. I would like to know if there is any way for you to point out on the temporary drawing which trees will be removed. And then the second question I have is regarding the under the temporary arrangement, vehicle parking. So, you know, trucks, etc., that belong to our park staff. Thank you.
Sure, thanks. Yeah. So in terms of the trees, the original set of drawings that was submitted for design approval and went through the design review actually had to designate what trees we were going to proposing to be removed. So I just want to be clear that they were the removal was part of the approval that the Planning Commission made, and I can't kind of quickly put on the screen which ones those are, but I can tell you that I think one of them. There we go. Thanks. It's basically the tree that is right in front of the existing facility. Yeah, my screen's not large enough to see that.
This
So
one?
in front of the existing shed portion. There you go. Yep, right there. That one. I think one of the ones, Eric, you want to clarify? I think it was already removed. That I had. It was an older drawing from the survey. Is it still on that drawing that Saban's holding?
Yeah, I'm gonna try to help this out a little bit here, actually.
I tried.
So bear
Thanks.
with me for a second while I do this, if you will.
Actually, Bill, your description was right on, and I was able to identify it.
Oh, there we go. Thanks, Eric.
Okay, yeah, if you look, there are 5 Canary Island pines. This tree actually isn't there anymore. This is just a tree stump, but it's this tree. Can you guys see my cursor on this while I'm doing this? So it is this tree right by the entrance, which actually has a big lean. It'll be this pine, this pine, a pine right here, and a pine right here.
Ooh, all of those are going. Awesome.
Yeah, actually, a lot of these neighbors here were kind of hoping that we would pick out all of the pine trees, but these were the ones that we had looked at for those purposes.
Okay, that's super clear. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, and then also to answer your question about parking and such, that's certainly some things that we have discussed. The bigger issue of these really is the tractor, because the tractor is just not going to fit into one of these container units. It's just too tall, most likely. So even looking at, you know, bringing in kind of one of those, you know, temporary carport tents that you see people use to park their boats or their RVs under is a possibility. We'll look at all of that. Street parking for the truck if needed, and or parking in our parking lot, which has certainly been done before, is also an option for that. The other smaller vehicles, we're certainly looking at some of these containers being fairly customizable with, you know, double door side entrances and ramps. You know, things like the mowers could most likely be fit into there.
Isabel, were you just talking about, I just want to clarify, was it just the staff, the maintenance crew parking The equipment parking is what you were talking about,
That's
not
correct.
construction parking.
Parking, yes. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions from the board? Devon?
So it was kind of stated already in there, but I just wanted to confirm that any of these storage units that we're going to be purchasing, we will try to repurpose and reuse for other things once construction's done. So we'll try to make it not a sunk cost.
Yeah, or resell.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of this is going to depend on sizing. We don't have a lot of available space places to put these things as big as they are, but they are good commodities. Unfortunately, for our needs, we really are picking out various companies and getting prices and need to customize a little bit more, because just having a dual entry 20-foot deep unit isn't going to work to our needs as much as having a side entry and being able to still use it as not just strictly a long-term storage, but a place where they can still access and get to equipment, tools, supplies that they need.
Okay. And can I make a general question-ish about the schedule and kind of the scheduling and costing of things with the COVID going on? Clearly there's going to be some delays, as everybody's been saying, with their construction. We had construction that was supposed to occur in April and hasn't started yet. So are we, and then there's also building materials that are costing more because things are out of stock. Are we kind of planning for these? I know that we planned on the back end here for if things get pushed out, but are we also kind of thinking about, or just having it in our mind, that materials and stuff that we may want to use may not be available, and being able to compromise with something else that due to needing to continue on with the project and not have it drag out?
Sure. Yeah, let me, a couple of things to distinguish a little bit between public projects and private projects is that as part of this bid package, we'll actually have a time to complete the project. That'll be part of the contract. It's both a advantage that we can do in a public bid project. It's also a little bit of a challenge in that if we push it too hard to make contractors deliver by a certain date, you can see one of two things: either the cost will go up to reflect the pressure of that schedule beyond what they might think is reasonable for them. You also have the possibility that they're just going to say that for the bid, and that you'll just be on sort of whipping the construction along constantly. So we're going to do our best to kind of, I think this actual construction schedule is fairly reasonable, except, as I said, for certain weather conditions. But even though we're starting in the winter, I have not found that to be short of a storm here or there, to be something that's going to throw off a complete schedule. In other words, I don't think they have to sit and wait until the spring to touch any ground. In terms of so that's specifically with the schedule. I can say that I'm certainly trying to build in a lot of flexibility in terms of materials. The building really is very simple in terms of the fact that it's a concrete slab with primarily wood structured columns and beams with some steel for lateral earthquake loads. There's the discretionary components would be more like the window system or the particular roll-up doors, or the bathroom finish. And again, all of that interior is going to be as just functional and economical as possible. So we'll have some discretion there to a degree. I do want to share with you that I've been doing through my other work publicly bid projects over the last couple of years, and I'm finding that despite things like COVID and fires and everything else, there are still people that are eager to do work and crews that are eager to do work. I think that it's going to be interesting to see how the bids come in, because my recent and extended experience over the last couple of years is that bids are all over the place. I was sharing a little bit with Eric that a recent project that I was managing, the spread in bids, we had predicted it to be maybe a $350,000 or $400,000 job. The highest bids came in at $900,000. The lowest bids came in at $200,000. We selected the $200,000 contractor, obviously, after doing a lot of due diligence and figuring out that they were, they could do the job and it wasn't sort of a false, proposal. So, and I'm seeing this time and time again, that there is just a huge spread. So those 2 weeks after we receive, it's not going to be a matter of just, throwing these things up and saying, oh, here's the lowest one. We have to certainly strive to get that low bid, but we're going to have to look at the package and the returns and how they structure their bids. We'll also see probably responses, and we'll set this up. We'll actually go and, active, rather than just advertising it and letting it sit there to see who it falls to. We'll go and shop it around as well. And we'll see, typical public contractors that will bid, but we'll also see atypical, ones who are willing to take a look at this job, maybe because it's not as, not as big and doable for a smaller contractor, as long as they adhere to maybe a process, meaning the public process of bidding and the proposals for, the application for payment. A lot of things that you don't need to deal with when you're dealing with, residential or private construction. And so, again, because of that, and because of my recent experience, I expect us to see a real wide range in the proposals, and which is great.
Thank you.
Further questions?
Bill, I'm not sure if you touched too much on this. One of the things that, Bill and I had talked about too is in the composition of the bid package itself, looking at, there's obviously some lessons learned from prior public work projects, looking at trying to incorporate as many of what are known as additional alternatives or add-alts into the package as well. That will be, here's a very base thing, and then what is the cost to add this, and what is the cost to add that? So then it gives you a little bit of an a la carte menu coming in from there that we have the ability to accept or not accept. Now, that said, we can't say, okay, we want contractor A to do this part, and we're going to use contractor B or bidder A or bidder B. But it will give us a chance to really kind of look and dissect out this project and kind of see where some of those variances may lay to, as opposed to just bid out the entire thing all in one shoot. Again, to Bill's point, this isn't a real complex job, and there's not a lot of those types of things, but we're going to try to identify as many of them as we can, because that'll give us a good opportunity as well to see, again, where the costing is coming from, where they're anticipating, and we would also expect this variance, just those adults as the primary bid itself. So it'll be an interesting process. I think there's been good lessons learned. As Bill mentioned, he's been bidding out several public works projects for the last few years. So all of that will certainly help as we put this together and then send it out. And it'll go out up and down the entire state, and obviously really focusing in on the northern part of the California, the Bay Area.
And I just want to say thanks to Eric and Luke for helping with the site preparation, all of that stuff, and the schedule to a degree. I presented to them what I thought the components were that I saw as reasonable as sort of assumptions. But I've really been working away on the drawings and coordinating with the structural engineer, and it's a lot for Eric and Luke to do, in addition to their normal duties, to also get this thing pulled together and ready for a clean start when you get a chance to to choose and review whatever comes back with the bids.
Very good. Any further questions from the board or comments? Okay. Thank you, Bill. Moving on to public comment.
Yeah, and Jeff, just a quick reminder, you do have one, you have a couple people on. I just want to remind that to notify that you want to make a comment, use the raise hand feature, and then we will be able to get to you on that. If you just click it once and leave it on. Okay, 1 second, here you go. You ready?
Yes, go ahead, Stephen.
Yes, interesting presentation. Thank you, Bill. I really regret the way that this project has unfolded here. A couple years ago, or whenever it was, when you were hired, you were not identified. The total cost for your services was, I think, $13,000 for the entire project, as Eric said on tape there. And now, the last I checked, I think you were up to around $50,000 in fees. I don't quite recall. So you've obviously done more work, and so the bill continues to rise, and we don't have any information on the cost of the project. Are any of you familiar with the with building cost calculators? I know certainly Bill would be familiar with that, but that's what developers use to estimate cost before they make the investment. Do we have any building cost calculations at this point? And if so, if not, why not? I guess this is a question for Eric. Secondly, first of all, also I want to say that, you know, there's nothing wrong aesthetically with Bill's project. It looks good, but we do still have the issue with the traffic flow in that area, the storage of materials. If you'll notice, if you walk back there, the guys just spread out everything, and I don't know how you're going to do that inside a walled area. I think it's a pipe dream to think that. And the essential problem with Bill's project is that it's a drive through. It's a longitudinal project as opposed to, you know, a standard but boring maintenance garage. So I guess the question is, have you done any building cost comparisons? And if you have not, how do you know whatever bids that you receive are going to be within a reasonable ballpark? So this is actually a question, I guess, for Eric, but also for Bill. Please don't say it's a comment, because I know you need to answer this question, please.
Bill, do you want to take that, or would you like me to, or a member of the board?
I'll share with you one of the, it's just a extension of what I was saying in this most recent example about the project that, you know, was estimated to be $400,000, that the spread in bids was $200,000 to $900,000. So the reality of public bidding is that it's the marketplace that's going to decide what the cost is. As I said, we're seeing ranges all over the place in those. We're seeing certain advantages of the, you know, conditions now, and in other ways potentially disadvantages. To spend money on further like estimating or time along those lines when we should really just see what the market says. It's one thing when you have a discretionary project where you know, if it's too much or more than, you know, what you want to spend, you just cut it in half, or you just don't do it and you just live with the existing conditions. I think it was decided by the board, you know, many years ago that the existing conditions could not continue for, if anything, liability exposure, let alone just, you know, making people work with a deficient building. So that you can take that off the table. There is no option to not do a project. The other option, which is available, is to cut the project in terms of extravagance or size. I think at this point, in terms of, we've already accepted and explained that the interior of the building, everything is going to be very functional and sort of at minimal usable expense. And then that leaves you essentially with area footages, where you can say, well, a foundation which is 50%, 1,200 square foot concrete foundation is half the cost of a 2,500 square foot foundation. That's actually, so we'll just cut our building in half. Leads you back to the sense of whether the building, half the size of the building is even feasible, in terms of what the district needs. I'll also say that, when you get to those types of decisions, it's not true that half the size of the building, say comprehensively costs half the amount, because a lot of the components, such as the profit and overhead of the contractor and general conditions, have efficiency. So the more you reduce the scale, the more expensive you're paying per square foot. So I did not manage a project, but I was part of an agency that did have a large facility project where they spent a bunch of money on estimating prior to what the project was going to be. They similarly sort of didn't really have too much discretion about reducing the size. It sort of was going to be what it was going to be in terms of the design scope. And in that particular case, the estimate was just low, and the bids at that time came in much higher. Having the information did not help them in the assessing how to proceed, really. It just pointed out that estimating can be a difficult, imprecise process, especially when it really comes down to it. It doesn't matter what the estimator says or what a published book at a certain time that's dissimilar to the conditions that exist at the time that the bids go out. What the market says, that at the end of the day is what's going to give you your ability to make the decision, and the real not estimated cost. So again, I think as Eric emphasized, we're going to put this package together so that we can really see the individual components, and if there are discretionary components that we can tweak down or adjust or take out of the project, or we'll certainly be able to do that. But also, it's never been presented to me that this was an option to just not do the project or continue with the existing building. And if anything, we know that the building is just going to get more and more and more expensive as we continue, and not cheaper. And also, there's been finally a lot of added expense. The year that it took to go through the design review, in my opinion, unnecessary design review, which did cost an additional $30,000, has lost us not only time, added expense, but during that time, construction costs have not been going down. They've been, if anything, going up. So I think the strategy that I was presented with, which was to move forward with getting the actual components, the structural design, which will give us a hard numbers between, from the marketplace, to then, just have to proceed with, is actually the most efficient and best way to proceed with the project.
Thank you, Bill. And thank you, Stephen, for the question. Are there any other comments from the public?
No.
Okay, hearing none.
Eric, John had his hand up, but it went up and then went down. I don't know if he still has a
Well, that's
question.
why I made the comment that I made.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, we will move. Bill, thank you again for
Thanks.
your detailed explanation. Appreciate it.
Thanks all.
And also the vagaries with regard to understanding the costs. But thanks again. Okay, moving on.
Hey, can you hold on 1 second here before you move on? I'm not sure if this is a function. I have another person who may have something to speak to, so I'm going to pump him in on this topic and see if he does want to talk to it, and if not, we can move on. Jeff, do you mind?
I'm still here.
All right, hold on. John, can you hear me? And if so, did you want to talk? You need to unmute yourself.
Yes. Interesting presentation, Bill. But from what you guys were talking about, it seemed like Eric and Bill must have at some time spoken about a cost of what we don't want to spend. So that's question number one. Do you have an outside number that you do not want to get to? And then if you don't have that, how are you going to know when to start cutting things and when to select one option and not another option if you don't know how much of a box you want to stay within?
Well, I was never given any outside parameters because I don't think anyone knew exactly what a one-off building like this was going to cost. I think that when you frame it in terms of what type of a box you want to stay within, again, to me it's a matter of what does the district believe that its capabilities are to function. What's the minimum? What are the minimum tools that it needs, and tools in this sense being the building itself that it needs to do its job. And I think
that's the question I'm asking.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think that over the years that I've been involved with this project as a consultant, it started and answered even before I came on board. There was a list of requirements. There was a list of associated square footages, and that's what went into the original design. And I think during that time we were clear, because I remember stating a number of times that the original area requests or square footage requests we actually reduced, and we pulled this down to what I was told was the minimum amount of space. If we get in when we actually get some market values here and find out what it actually is in terms of cost, and the board wants to change direction on that scope.
Okay, but what are they going to change
fine.
directions from? So you're talking like there must be a number. There's got to be a number that.
As I explained,
you're going on and on about stuff. But if I don't ask you, I'll ask Eric or anybody on the board. Do you have any idea, any number? I'm not trying to stop the project, or that's fine, go with it. I'm just curious. I mean, we've been working so long. You would think you'd have some kind of an idea of this is what we can afford. And if we get to this point, then we've got to pull out option A, et cetera, et cetera. So you're saying you're just going with a blank piece of paper, and whatever bids come in, then we'll figure out what we're going to do.
No.
Okay, well then what is the number you're talking about?
Well, what I said no to was no to the fact that we're going with a blank piece of paper. The project has been talked about and
okay,
reviewed.
But what's
and developed.
that number on the outside end then, if you don't have a blank piece of paper?
What I was referring to was the description.
John, as you may recall, not so long ago, we had to redo fire department kitchen, and it was our virgin public project, and at first our budget was $40,000, which in my opinion was absurdly high given the size of the project, because certainly in my experience as a resident, as a personal, with my personal project, $40,000 is more than enough for a pretty nice kitchen. Well, we learned very soon that not only is 40,000 not possible, but neither 60,000, and we ended up spending close to 100,000 on the kitchen project, which was absurdly high. and offensive in my opinion, yet absolutely necessary. And certain members of the public were enraged that we even spend more than a couple of meetings talking about this, because it should have been done no matter what cost.
Exactly,
So-
because in all these meetings I've attended, there's never been any comment about cost. And that's fine.
Right. So,
You guys aren't going to
basically
give it
what
to
I'm
me
saying
or
is
anybody else. It just seems irresponsible to
what
go
I'm
in
trying
and not
to
know what your outside end is. You're saying you at least went into that project with a cost of 40,000. At least you had an idea. That's all
Yes,
I'm asking.
but
You have an
John,
idea.
John, we ended up spending more than twice as much, which is absurd.
Yeah.
So
So
I
what do
think
you
that
what are you starting with here? That's all I'm asking. It's a simple question, but
you
I'm
don't
getting
have
all these frustrating looks here. So that's fine. If you don't have it, we'll just wait till we'll wait till the bids come in.
Works. I think the best case scenario is to really listen to an expert who has been through this many times, and he advises us to first get our ducks in a row and know exactly what we need to spec out in order to get an educated bid proposal from the construction.
Okay. Well, that's a good answer then. So you're saying we don't have a number. We're just going to base it on what we get from the market. And that's, I believe, what Bill said when he started, quite a bit ago about his presentation. You were going to let the market conditions dictate your budget. That's fine. I think that's what you're saying. Is that correct, Eric?
We'll have to wait and see what the bids come in at. Bill and I won't be the body approving anything. It's up to the board to approve what the bids are. And our goal is to have these, to keep this project moving, to put the bid process out in September, and ideally be able to present no later than November.
Okay. It always seems like there's a secret. Will all the bids be available for the public to view if we wanted to?
Of course.
Okay. Well, thank you for the time.
Great.
Have a good
Thank
evening,
you.
guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comment from the public?
No, that's all of them.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thanks again.
Once again, Bill and Eric and Isabella. We'll move on to item G2, the P&R maintenance activity report. Luke?
Thanks, Jeff. The main thing we've been working on from the recreation staff point of view is just running our summer camps this summer. And I'm pleased to say that after all the work of setting things up and changing how we run things and reducing our numbers and adding a bunch of protocols and procedures to make sure that we're within all of the safety guidelines, things are running very well. We just started our 5th week of our 9-week summer, and I'm very pleased with how things have transpired. Staff have been great adapting to the new requirements, wearing masks, cleaning things constantly, keeping their groups separate and distanced, and everyone seems to be having a great time, and things are running very smoothly. So we're very pleased with how it's going, and it's been great to be able to offer this program. We're currently serving 168 campers every day. And by the end of the summer, we will have offered camp to about 360 individual campers. And so we're really pleased to be able to provide that service to these families in our community. So that's been great. And I just want to say a thank you to our part-time staff who've really done an amazing job of keeping camp fun and exciting while also adhering to these stringent guidelines to keep everybody safe and healthy throughout the summer. We're currently planning on finalizing our plans to open up the pool, and we're planning to do so in the next couple weeks with a plan to make an announcement once we finalize everything later this week. It will be just for lap swim during the weekdays starting out, and we'll be doing lane reservations ahead of time, so about five people can come at a time to swim for about 45 minutes. And we'll be offering morning and late afternoon, early evening time slots to start out with, and we'll see how that goes. We've been in touch with some of the other pools that have opened up in the last week to see how things are going, and have gotten a lot of good ideas and feedback from our colleagues throughout Marin, and are excited to be able to to offer some semblance of programming at the pool for the public. So stay tuned for those details as we put those out. Hopefully later this week, we'll put everything up on our website and next door, and email out to all of our participants to let people know how they can take advantage of that, and what the exact details will be. But we're finalizing all that right now, and we're really excited to move forward with that. We hope that none of that gets rolled back or shut down, but we're gonna go forward with optimistically. And as far as the programs that we're able to offer right now, it's still very limited. We're waiting to get final plans about what our fall programming is able to look like with our preschool program, our after school program, our youth and adult classes, and we will do whatever we're allowed to do in whatever capacity we can. But right now, the only things that we're able to do beyond summer camp are outdoor programs. I think will be coming out soon, and the pool, and then there may be some limited small rec classes that we'll be able to offer a little bit later this summer. So we will announce that as we're able to figure out what we can do as the new health orders come out. Our office remains closed right now, but we're conducting business by appointment out on the patio, and staff have been working with our registrant, our families and participants to keep them served, even though they're not coming in physically, so we can keep everybody safe and our staff safe in the office. So that's been working out really well, and thankfully the weather's been lovely to do outdoor business. From the parks maintenance point of view, we are right now working on cleaning out the park shop in preparation for the upcoming demolition. So figuring out what we're going to keep, what we're going to throw away, how to organize it, and what we're going to do to make that process work, and how we're going to transition to our interim temporary park shop space while the construction takes place. So that's been a big focus this last few weeks, and we're excited to actually have some momentum and to be moving forward with some progress there. And beyond that, staff's been busy fixing a lot of irrigation this last few weeks, and cleaning up some landscaping around the various parks. Upcoming projects, mostly we're focusing on transitioning to the temporary park shop space, but also adding some shade sails and some signage in the open space, among other projects as they come up. Does anyone have any questions?
I have one. It was brought up to me by a neighbor. I was wondering who does the maintenance on the median along Miller Creek?
That's one of the areas that is taken care of by the land design contractor that we use.
Okay.
Depending on what section.
Right.
From Las Colinas to Lucas Valley, let's say. Because evidently somebody cuts a bush in the median. It just so coincided across the street from his house, and they just left the debris in the median.
I actually think I know what you're talking about, Bill, and that actually wasn't our guys.
Okay.
Was that closer towards Miller Creek Road?
It was.
I mean, closer towards Las Colinas Road.
Well,
So,
it was down there. It was, the corner of Peachstone.
yeah, so I actually know what happened there, only because I happened to drive by and see it happening. That was actually a county crew that had come out, and they had cleared that to make, there's some signage right there about the upcoming stop sign and turns and everything that was getting a little overgrown, and they wound up clearing that out to make it more visible. I saw him doing it, and then when I drove by later, certainly not trying to throw the county under the bus, but I drove by later, I saw all of the debris that had been left right there where he did all of the cutting. Now, I would have to actually look to Luke to say, because I brought it to Luke's attention, I'm not sure if they came back with another crew later to clean it, or if we actually went over there and cleaned that out.
I believe they came back and cleaned it up.
Right, but they didn't do it immediately, to your point. It was one guy who came out, trimmed up the work, piled it in the median, and then it was probably a day or two later when the follow-up crew came to load it into the trailer or whatever trucks they use for that and move it on. But I know exactly what you're talking about.
Okay, because it was brought up to me just this afternoon as I was arriving at home.
No.
So I said, sure, I will ask.
Yeah. No, that
Thank
was
you.
strictly to make, if you look there, you'll see that there's some signage, traffic signs.
Okay.
So he was clearing that area out. They don't communicate any of that with us. Technically, that is actually county right away and county property. We don't own that median. It's just nobody was ever doing anything about it. And my understanding is many years ago, it was just becoming such a blight, especially as it approaches the community center and the park and everything, that at some point our parks crews started taking it on and keeping it trimmed. And once you do that, ain't nobody else ever going to come back to do it. And so
Okay.
that is how we inherited the landscape maintenance of that median.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, sir.
Other questions? I was thrilled to see that land design finally shortened the bushes and the median between Lucas Valley Road and Cedarberry so that you can see oncoming 45-mile-an-hour cars before getting rear-ended. But other than that, community kitchen or community center kitchen, what's happening there?
No big plans, but our door is currently missing and we're working on getting that replaced. To get the new oven in, we had to take the door off the hinges, and the mechanism was very, very old and was not able to go back on. So we're working on getting that figured out right now.
I see. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any
And then
further
if I could
questions?
just follow up and actually give Luke a lot of credit here. In regards to land design, he's spent a lot of time recently communicating with our latest liaison. We seem to kind of cycle through these about 2 to 3 people per year, it feels like. But he's certainly, gone above and beyond in meeting with this new person, taking him around, showing him where some of the more problematic areas are that do seem to get missed from Lucas Valley Estates all the way through and everything else that we do. And those medians that you're talking about, Jeff, are some of the areas. So thanks to Luke for really, tracking them down, figuring out who our latest person was, and then taking the time to really show them where the crews are missing and where they need to improve.
Very good. Yeah, like I said, I appreciate the fact that it got done. So that's wonderful. Thank you.
It wasn't by accident.
I'm sure that's true. Okay, Sivan.
I just wanted to say thank you to Luke. I've heard feedback from various parents in the community, and their kids have been very happy at camp. It doesn't seem like kids are really that affected by the fact that the counselors are wearing the masks, and they're enjoying themselves. And I think parents are enjoying their break.
Oh, thanks for saying that. Yeah, we've had a lot of positive feedback, and everyone is sort of sighing with relief, like, oh, it's not that weird. It's not this crazy thing. It seems to be somewhat normal, and we're really, really happy that that's been the sentiment. It's been very positive all the way around. Everyone's very grateful. So thank you for passing that on. Appreciate it.
Leah.
And parking is so much easier since there's fewer people there. It is not the insanity that it's been. Probably not for the neighbors, not the staff, and not the parents dropping off the campers. So I love the fact that I don't have to build it an extra 10 minutes to circle around looking for parking. So
that is true. My driveway is not blocked every morning.
Yeah, that's been nice.
Good point. Okay, anything further from the board? Anything from the public?
Yeah, 1 second, Jeff.
Yes, go ahead,
Hi,
Stephen.
hi, Luke. First of all, also I want to congratulate you. You pulled it off. It appears, and there's a big debate going on in the community regarding the school system. Can we do this safe? And I keep pointing out the fact that it doesn't appear that we're having any issues. And I hope you can, with the summer camp and health issues, I hope you can bear witness to that fact to appropriate people, because it certainly would help move the debate along as far and maybe comfort some parents that their children will be safe, provided their precautions met. So I just want to make that point. And then I want to talk about the park and the open space. We have had probably more guests in the park, hikers in the park, than ever before. A lot of them are seniors. The park is not, I mean, apparently there's not a lot of work being done in the open space. And there's still, you know, the lack of a bench. There's no, they're basically, seniors are really, there seems to be no concern at all for seniors. And that is part of our mission here. And that's also partly why we get the money, that we can provide services for an access for I don't want to call it handicap, but all levels of physical ability. So yeah, you could put in the pickleball lines on the courts. That would be very helpful. Seniors will get out to do that. You can put in a few benches. You can put in some handrails. We're seeing seniors there, a lot of seniors walking through the park, which leads to my next point. And this is maybe a little bit touchy because I see Bill Shea there all the time, and that's the horseshoe pit. Unfortunately, you know, it's a great community meeting spot, but it's kind of turned into a drinking spot. And it's also an area, I'm sure you've heard complaints about it, but none of the guys seem to be wearing masks or social distancing. It's just kind of life as it goes on there. And I would like, I'd like to see Bill for one, you know, take a little bit of a leadership role there and realize that this is not because of the guys there that necessarily need the protection, but it's the seniors who are walking by who are freaked out when they see such a gathering. It's community awareness, community responsibility. We're missing out on taking care of our senior population. So that's a little bit of feedback. I do think that I still see a lot of erosion. I don't see a lot of maintenance being done in the park. You know, hopefully the trash is being emptied every day. Sometimes it's not. So I remain kind of a little unhappy with the level of care that we give our open space. I don't go into other parts of the open space as much as I'd like to, but I understand there's issues there as well, as people are riding their bikes. A lot of people are out walking. So we need to maybe take this time to focus our efforts on the open space and ask ourselves, how can we do better for our entire community? So that's it. And please, Luke, let people know that the kids are safe. Hopefully there's going to be some kind of report at the end of this. You'll do testing or something to prove that the kids were safe all summer. I certainly hope we can do that. That'll help out a lot of people. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. G3. Next PNR Commission meeting scheduled for July 28th. And we will move on to board member items of interest requests for future agenda items. I think we've already mentioned one future agenda item due to the BLM document. Again, I'll send that to you and Tiffany, Eric.
Great.
Does anyone else have any items of interest to share?
Yes, I just would like to note for the board, I will not be able to attend next month's meeting, so I apologize.
Do you have a good excuse?
I do.
All right then. Okay. Anything else from anyone on the board? Okay. Any member of the public have items of interest or requests for future agenda items? Stephen.
Thank you, Jeff. This BLM document, are you going to post it on our website? Who's it being sent to? Is it just, I mean, I don't quite understand the document. you know, who the audience for the document is. So that's maybe you could answer that, and then I just want to leave with one other item.
Understand that this is predominantly being driven by me without extensive discussion with the rest of the board, given the fact that our community has twice now reached either national or statewide news for issues in and around Black Lives Matter. I thought that the entire movement across the country to elevate this discussion was worth going outside of our normal restrictions about what we talk about, given the fact that we are part of this community who has been essentially mentioned at a national and state level as having a problem in this area. I'm hopeful that this document that I read from will go into the written meeting minutes of this meeting, and that it goes on the agenda for discussion by the remainder of the board at the following meeting. And hopefully some, part or all of it will be adopted just simply as a reflection of what I hope is the thinking of the majority of our community. Does that answer your question?
Well, I was just wondering if you're going to publish it in the newspaper, you're going to contact news media. What are you doing to, I mean, who's the audience? Who's going to get the message?
I think, honestly, if the board decides to adopt it, like I said, it or any part of it, whatever does get approved, we will, number one, have in the minutes and possibly also post on our website.
Okay, thank you. So
you bet.
As far as the agenda item that I wish to bring up, and there's two, and I bring them up every month. I would like to see some financial strategic planning. Apparently, we're not, we're basically not going to be able to plan for cash flow because we don't know what our costs will be and when the the bills will come due. So I'm a little uncomfortable with the response given earlier there, and I do think that it requires really a sober assessment of our financial condition and our ability to pay for some of the bills that will be coming due. Then the other thing is I do think that our greatest asset, well, we have lots of great assets. The one I'm most passionate about is our open space and our natural environment here. And I hope the board will see what many residents see and consider, one of the essential features of living in Marinwood, Lucas Valley, and really take on the responsibility of a new vision for open space. I think it's long overdue. Thanks.
Thank you, Stephen. I don't believe there's anybody else from the public attending. So I'll field a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Bill, second by Sivan.
That was Isabel. I was too late in my unmuting.
Oh, sorry. I saw your hand. I thought it was you. Hey,
I just wrote y'all down.
You did a really good imitation of Sivan there, Isabel. You want to do a roll call?
I
Make it
will.
official?
I would like to, yes. Board President Naylor.
Aye.
Director Green.
Aye.
Director Oysterman.
Aye.
Director Perry.
Aye.
And Director Shea.
Yes.
Thank you.
Excellent. And happy Bastille Day, everybody.
Thank you all for your
Thank you for
time.
hanging in
Okay.
there.
So
Well,
much.
the
Good
meeting
night,
ran
everybody.
long, but appreciate
Good night.
everybody hanging in. Thank you.
Yeah,
Take care.
Right.
you bet.
Stay
Bye.
safe.
You, we'll do our best.